So I'm going to talk about something a little bit different than what I usually talk about. I'm going to talk about the death penalty and why I think it should be abolished. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of you might disagree with me for whatever reasons you have, but I will highlight some of the main reasons why I disagree with the death penalty as a whole. Now, let's get one thing straight. I don't like the idea of murderers running loose any more than the average death penalty supporter. The thing is, I think we can all agree that we support the idea of creating a safe society as efficiently as possible and with as few cases of innocent people being prosecuted as possible, and hopefully for the people who are convicted and who are guilty of crimes, that we treat them still with a sense of dignity and respect, because that is something that we have earned as human beings and is inalienable. And I think that the death penalty violates a few of these things. The number one reason I really don't support the death penalty might be my weakest point, but I grew up here in Canada, where we don't really execute people, except I think for cases of treason. Now, I don't support the death penalty personally because I think it really doesn't make us as society better than the murderers we claim to want to stop. How does one solve the violence that the murderers cause with more violence? Now, some of you might say that we have good intentions when we terminate the lives of murderers, and murderers have no such thing. Okay, but why does that change anything? That still doesn't change the fact that these actions, because of the extreme nature of these actions, can have very negative consequences. And in fact, it seems quite easy to judge others for their misdeeds and justify very evil things done to them. But when we're placed in that scenario, not quite so simple. Which brings me to the topic of what if they're innocent? Now, I'm not going to look at numbers here. I'm not going to say necessarily 50% of death row inmates were innocent, because I don't know. Maybe the majority of them aren't. Let's assume they aren't. But even if it was 99% of death row inmates were actually guilty of the crime they convicted and 1% wasn't, that's still a sizable number of people. And even one innocent life is something that we should try and avoid taking. And one thing that the justice system really runs upon is repairing harm done to people, especially when justice was not served. So if someone was innocent and they were executed, well, there's no way for us to really pay them back now, is there? People might claim that this is how we keep prisoners in check, and this is how we stop them from murdering other people. But that's not a very good justification, in my opinion, because when we take this logic further, I don't think many people would agree with that logic. So why even bother having a trial for criminals? Because I'm sure that some criminals are really guilty of their crime, and a lot of them may be heinous crimes, so why even give them a trial? Why even send them to jail? Just kill them on the spot. Well, I'm sure there might be some innocent people lost in that crusade, but as long as you punish the guilty, right, and as long as you stop them from hurting society, right, you see how this sort of logic can really backfire on society? Some people might say, well, it's less expensive to just kill people instead of incarcerate them. And I agree that it is very expensive to keep prisons running, but that's not a good reason to kill people. Finally, some people might appeal to emotion and say, well, if it was your son or daughter, or if it was your parents that were killed, or your spouse, or your partner, you would feel the same way. And I'd say, probably, I would. But that's because in that situation, I am not thinking with a clear mind. I am thinking with pretty much raw instinct and my emotions, and not sitting down and examining the situation objectively. I would be emotionally vested in that situation, and of course I would want to seek retribution for some harm that I have perceived that was done to me. But this is often not the best way to go about doing things. And in fact, I would argue that it's an incredibly inefficient way of doing things, and often it can lead to a lot of innocent people getting hurt. An eye for an eye will make the world go blind. But I disagree. It does more than just make the world go blind. It makes us completely numb. It dulls our senses and our sense of empathy, especially. Not only towards the supposed wrongdoer, but the worst of all is that it numbs us towards the experience of innocent people who get in the way of our vendettas. And I don't know about you, but I don't see any justice in that world. And that's not the type of world I want to live in. May the truth always be heard. Peace.